Hello there. On my channel, I get some heat because I don't even want to say I dislike these firearms, but I'm not as enthusiastic about them as people think I should be. Those two firearms are the Bull Armory and the Walther PDP. I've shot the Walther before, and I was underwhelmed. I mean, it's not that it was a bad gun, but I wasn't particularly impressed, and I didn't really like the recoil impulse. Then I saw this one with the comp. This is the Pro X, and I thought, you know what? I'll give that gun a fair shake. So today we're gonna find out, was I wrong? Let's get into it. Shooter, make ready. Are you ready? Stand by. All right. This is my Walther PDP Pro X. Just got the thing, waiting on the optic plate. So I want to get some rounds through it, get a feel for it. My grip has evolved and changed since the last time I really fired a PDP. So we're gonna see if I'm a bigger fan of this gun right now. Here we go. Again, not terrible. Good gun, decent gun. I want to put another mag through it. And then I've got a Glock with me. I'm gonna fire that. I'll be right back. Take two, we're gonna go back to back with my Glock here. Let's see how this goes again. This thing's comped, my Glock is not. See how this feels. Glock, Gen 6, Glock 17, no comp, but it does have an optic. That's really the only difference in the two. Let's see how this goes. The only differences, I guess. Here we go. I'm gonna measure that recoil. I'm gonna put the Mantis on these things and run these things back to back, because I'm telling you, this thing did not recoil any more than that one did. In like, as far as the recoil impulse in my hand, that thing's got a giant comp on it, but there's so much mass up here and it's so top heavy that it just feels so much more difficult to control to me. And everybody like goes on and on about the Walther trigger. Don't get me wrong, it's crisp, but I think the trigger pull on that thing's heavier than my Glock. This thing's stock. I haven't done a thing to this trigger, and I think this trigger's better. And if I complain about Glock, for one thing, it's their trigger. Now, I'm a Glock guy. I like the reliability, the durability, and I've always said if my life's on the line, I'm reaching for a Glock. But I'm not a Glock guy because they shoot flat and smooth and soft. That's not it at all. It's the reliability, and I know what's gonna happen when I put this in my hand, and I know what's gonna happen when I've got it on my belt. And I trust it. I don't think they were that different, and I expected a lot more out of the Walther, being perfectly honest. I'm gonna go run it again. All right, This is an unpopular opinion, and I get it. I just don't happen to like the feel of a Walther PDP. The grip is fine. I can get in there. It's the recoil impulse on it feels clunky to me, and I don't know how else to say it. It just doesn't feel like a smooth recoil impulse. I prefer the recoil impulse on a Glock, on a SIG P320, on gosh, what else? What other strike? Oh, the M&P. I can't think of a mainstream highly popular striker fire gun that I like less in my hand than the Walther PDP. Now, I also don't like the Beatles, okay? So my point is, my opinion is likely not going to be your exact opinion, but I'm going to show you some things about the gun so that you get an idea of where that opinion is coming from and what I'm talking about. I hear a lot of people talk about the trigger on a Walther and how incredible these triggers are, and they are. This is fantastic. The trigger comes back. So it's a wide trigger with a narrow safety dingus here, right? So it comes back to there, goes to a very, very distinct wall, and breaks. Let's go back to that again. Wall, breaks. That is a good trigger. Now listen to the reset. Very tactile reset. It's fantastic. This is a great trigger for a striker fired gun. No doubt it's a great trigger. Now, you'll hear people talk about, how a Glock has a terrible trigger pull, and everybody complains it's 5.5 pounds, it's crazy. Well, here's the trigger pull on the Walther. 6 pounds. It's actually a heavier trigger pull than my stock Glock. All right, here is my Gen 5 Glock 19X. Safety, there we go. 5.5 pounds. Let's do that again. Now, is there a big difference? I mean, once you hit 5 pounds, are you really going to notice the difference between 5.5 and 6 pounds? Look at that, safety defeated. There we go. 5.5 pounds. Now, it's a different type of break, right? Very tactile reset, but more of a rolling break than a solid wall, right? There's the wall. There it goes, okay? So it creeps. There we go. This one, back to a wall, defined wall, 6 pounds of pressure, and a break. Now, at speed, and in like the reality of firing a gun rather than slowly doing it here on my bench, it's really tough to tell the difference. I do prefer the feel of the Walther, no doubt, over this trigger. But I'm going to have to do something. There are all kinds of trigger kits out there for about $200 to improve the trigger on the Walther. So totally doable. I can do the same thing. I can order a Johnny Glocks trigger, or I can, if I want to spend a little bit more money and get the best trigger on the planet out there for a Glock, I can step up and I can get the Ace trigger system for Trigger Tech and get even a better reset and crisp pull, shorter reset. Now, that's an expensive upgrade, but for a gun that recoils better in my hand, that fits better in my hand, and performs better, I'm willing to do it. Now, this is the next thing I'll show you. Now, let's look at the next thing here. Here is my Glock 47, and you can see I have the Radian Ramjet on here. You can see
the Walther is definitely a thicker gun, right? And you can see that big old comp at the end, you would think would have a bigger impact. But there's a significant advantage in the Ramjet over the Walther. Now, from a build standpoint, if I get a stock Glock 17 or a Glock 47 in this case, you're looking in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 600, something like that is what you're probably going to find. This one's right at $1,000. Okay, so I've got, let's call it a $400 difference between this gun and this gun ish. And actually, we'll call it a $300 difference because I think this one retail about $700 and retail about. So you can probably find comparable discounts on either gun, right? You can find them used out there. There's places you can go, but you're probably going to see a roughly $300. I'll call it a $300 difference between this and this. So what could you do for $300? Well, you could do a Ramjet for right at $350, so maybe a touch more, but a significant difference. If you're okay with the trigger on a stock Glock and you want to do one big upgrade to your Glock to make it outperform the Walther, get that for sure. I didn't notice a massive recoil difference between a non-comped and a comped Walther. So non-comped Glock 47, comped Walther. I didn't notice a big difference on the feel of that snappy recoil in my hand. About the same amount of muzzle rise. I'll show you the stats on it right now.
Okay, we're back. I put the Mantis on the Gen 6 Glock 17. I'm gonna put a total of 36 rounds on target down here and measure that out. Then I'll swap over. We'll do exactly the same thing with that PDP Pro X, and we'll see how that comes out. Again, the differences that we're looking at here, this one has an optic, the PDP does not, but the biggest difference should be the PDP has a giant comp on the end. So want to see what the Mantis has to say on that recoilometer that they've got. Let's give this a go. 18 rounds, then we'll swap and do 18 more. Just trying for a nice steady pace on them. I have swapped the Mantis over to the PDP Pro. It's the Pro X. I don't know if that matters to you, but here we go. 2 mags of 18 each. Get my palm in there on this grip. Okay, while he's shooting, I'm going to read those of you who are just listening what's on the screen. The comparison here, the Walther PDP Pro X muzzle rise is 0.67 degrees, and the Gen 6 Glock 0.78 degrees, so a little bit more on the Gen 6. Recoil width 0.60 on the Walther, 0.36 on the Gen 6. Recoil angle, nothing crazy, and recovery time almost identical. The Walther PDP Pro X is somewhere in the 1,000 bone range, okay? Which is significantly more than the Glock Gen 6. A few $100s. It's also comped. And so now that I've run the non-comped Gen 6 17 up against it, I thought I'd add a Radian Ramjet, measure that recoil. So we'll have 3 sources of data rather than just the 2. So the question would be, how much softer or less violent was the recoil on the comped PDP X? It should be less. It didn't feel a lot to my hand, but I could be surprised. And now let's put it up against the Radian Ramjet and see how that goes, because the price, that'd be about the same. Let's have a look. Okay, here we go. Okay, again, for those of you who are just listening to this, I've got all 3 guns comparisons up there now, according to the Mantis data. The Gen 6 Glock 17 with the Ramjet, the muzzle rise is 0.25 degrees. It's about less than half of what the Walther is, about a third of what it was on the Gen 6 Glock. Recoil width, 0.31 versus 0.6 on the PDP. Recoil angle, the recoil angle on the Gen 6 with the Ramjet is virtually 0.06 degrees. And then the recovery time, literally half, less than half of what it is for the other two guns. Just a significant improvement in recoil. I don't know if that's visible on camera. Flat out, no question, a Glock with a Radian Ramjet shoots softer, flatter, and smoother than the Walther PDP Pro X. Absolutely no questions asked. And we're gonna go back to the shop here. I'm gonna show you size differences, how the two things compare. We'll look at the trigger. We'll get into some of the details. Let's go back to the house.
Okay, let's look at some weight here. Okay. 1.49, 1 pound, 4.9 ounces. 1 pound, 7.8 ounces. So almost exactly 3 ounces difference between the two. The optic makes a little difference, but as you saw out there, I fired these, not that one. I fired these two guns side by side, the Gen 6, and I fired it like this in this configuration, and it was very close to the same in recoil, not a significant difference. And I would have expected the Walther to perform better with that big old comp and all that weight out on the end. I would have expected less snappiness, less muzzle rise. I didn't see that in the data, and I didn't feel that in my hand. Then when I added the Radian Ramjet on here and fired the gun that way, this was significantly flatter. So feel like that comp is much more effective on a Glock than the one that they have on the Walther. So guys, there's my take. Again, if you like Walther, I'm not saying you're dumb. It's a great gun. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my taste. It doesn't feel right in my hand. It doesn't feel as good in my hand as a Glock does. And that gives you and I like Glock for its reliability, but I'm not saying a Glock is the best shooting gun in the world. You start getting into other guns, like this is a metal M&P striker fired gun with a comp, and it's on a whole nother level because this gun outshoots this gun, right? So I'm not trying to say Glock is the best gun ever. That's not the point of this comparison. I'm trying to give you a rough comparison between two guns that I feel like are fairly comparable. So would I recommend the Walther PDP? Sure. If it feels good in your hand and you like the look of the gun and you're a Walther guy, you are not doing anything wrong. Does it feel good in my hand? Is it a fit for Danny? No. I'm not a big fan of this gun, and this will be probably the shortest ownership that I've ever had. The shortest amount of time I've ever owned a gun. I'll move this thing along fairly quickly. I'll trade it for something else because it's just not right for me, and I'm going to move along. So there you go. My take on the Walther PDP Pro. Thanks for stopping by.